First of all, welcome. We're going to do, we're going to hit the longest chapter in Genesis today. We might do more reading than commenting. So 24 is long, and then 25. We might read 26. And we're also getting into kind of a rough. It's difficult because it's not self-contained now in just a couple chapters of certain things. So this whole Jacob story really runs, I mean, he doesn't actually leave the scene until chapter 49, near the very end of the book, when he actually dies. So there's a lot of, this story about his deception, in regards to his, there's other deception pieces that are coming. I mean, in a perfect world, hey Michael, in a perfect world we would all sit here for about 2.5, 3 hours and keep reading and reading and reading and taking the full text. So you're going to have to hold on. Hi Jerry. You're going to have to hold on to a little bit of this, is what I'm saying. I'd like to open with a prayer from Ted Loder's book called Gorillas of Grace. As it's snowing, I'm going to read the prayer for spring.
But the blossoms are there.
Yeah, the blossoms are there, right. I fear I may not have any peaches this year. We'll have to see if the peach tree was damaged. But this is entitled, Be with me in my unfolding. And it goes like this. It is spring, Lord, and the land is coming up green again, unfolding outside my well-drawn boundaries and urgent schedules. And there is the mystery and the smile of it. The willows are dripping honey color into the rivers, and the mother birds are busy in manger nests. And I am learning again that for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. O Lord, you have sketched the lines of spring. Be with me in my unfolding. It is spring, Lord, and my blood runs warm with the song of the sap, longing for a beauty I would become. And there is the mystery and smile of it. The buds are swelling on the bush. The sun is beginning to coax the color from what is being curled against the cold. The air is sweet to the nostrils. Even the city seems to be rubbing its eyes from a long sleep. And there is a promise in the season I know no name for except life. O Lord, you have sketched the lines of spring. Be with me in my longing. It is spring, Lord, and something stirs in me, reaching, stretching, groping for words, peeking through my defenses, beckoning in my laughter, riding on past my fears, pulsing in my music. And there is the mystery and smile of it. Be with me in my reaching, so I will touch or be touched, this time by a grace, a warmth, a light, to unfold my life to a new beginning, a fresh budding, a spring within as well as around me. O Lord, you have sketched the lines of spring. Be with me in my reaching. Let's pray for this day Christy Hensler Davis, asking God's blessing of healing for her, and for Roberta McNamara, who I believe may still be in Northwest Hospital. I'm not positive. She may have gone to rehab, but I'm trying to track that down. So, let's begin with chapter 24, as I mentioned, the longest chapter in the book of Genesis. And so whoever likes to start off, you don't have to, just hand it off when you're ready to hand it off, okay? Don't feel like you gotta stick it out. Linda, you want to start us off?
The marriage of Isaac and Rebekah. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his house, who had charge of all that he had, Put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I live, but will go to my country and to my kindred and get a wife for my son Isaac. The servant said to him, Perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came? Abraham said to him, See to it that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spoke to me and swore to me, To your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all kinds of choice gifts from his master. And he set out and went to Aram,
I would say Naharam.
okay,
Naharam.
Ram Naharam, to the city of Nahor. He made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water. It was towards evening, the time when women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. I'm standing here by the spring of water, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. Let the girl to whom I shall say, Please offer your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, Drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. Before he had finished speaking, there was Rebekah, who was born to son of Malcolm, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, coming out with her water jar on her shoulder. The girl was very fair to look upon, a virgin whom no man had known. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, Please let me sip a little water from your jar. Drink, my lord, she said, and quickly lowered her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also, until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether or not the Lord had made his journey successful. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold nose ring weighing 1/2 shekel, and 2 bracelets for her arms weighing 10 gold shekels, and said, Tell me whose daughter you are. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? She said to him, I'm the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nichol, whom she bore to Nahor. She added, We have plenty of straw and fodder and a place to spend the night. The man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord and said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and his faithfulness towards my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on the way to the house of my master's kin. Then the girl ran and told her mother's household about these things. Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran out to the man, to the spring. As soon as he had seen the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and when he had heard the words of his sister Rebekah, Thus the man spoke to me. He went to the man, and there he was, standing by the camels at the spring. He said, Come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside when I have prepared the house and a place for the camels? So the man came into the house, and Laban unloaded the camels and gave him straw and fodder for the camels and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat, but he said, I will not eat till I have told my errand. He said, Speak on. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become wealthy. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male and female slaves, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and he has given him all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, You shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I live, but you shall go to my father's house, to my kindred, and get a wife for my son. I said to my master, Perhaps the woman will not follow me. But he said to me, The Lord before whom I walk will send his angel with you and make your way successful. You shall get a wife for my son, from my kindred, from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my kindred. Even if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if you will only make successful the way I am going, I am standing here by the spring of water. Let the young woman who comes out to draw, to whom I shall say, please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, there was Rebekah coming out with her water jar on her shoulder. And she went down to the spring and drew. I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly let down the jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will also water your camels. So I drank, and she also watered the camels. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Michal bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to obtain the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you deal loyally and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so that I may turn either to the right hand or to the left.
You can hand it off. You don't have to read it if you want. Is somebody
Well, that's
gonna
all
pick
right. A lot of it's repetitious.
up? Yeah, I know. Is somebody going to pick up?
Oh, well,
Oh,
I'll
Judy?
follow up,
Okay.
yeah. Tough act to follow. Then Laban and Bethuel answered, the thing comes from the Lord. We cannot speak to you anything bad or good. Look, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the ground before the Lord. And the servant brought out jewelry of silver and of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave to her brother and to her mother costly ornaments. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they rose in the morning, he said, send me back to my master. Her brother and her mother said, let the girl remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that she may go. But he said to them, do not delay me, since the Lord has made my journey successful. Let me go, that I may go to my master. They said, we will call the girl and ask her. And they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? She said, I will. So they sent away their sister Rebekah and her nurse, along with Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, may you, our sister, become thousands of myriads. May your offspring gain possession of the gates of their foes. Then Rebekah and her maids rose up, mounted the camels, and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Isaac had come from Beer Lahai-Roi and was settled in the Negev. Isaac went out in the evening to walk in the field, and looking up he saw camels coming. And Rebekah looked up, and when she saw Isaac, she slipped quickly from the camel and said to the servant, who is the man over there walking in the field to meet us? The servant said, it is my master. So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent. He took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
Okay, thank you, Linda and Judy, for reading. Thank you. So let's go back to the beginning here. So verse 2 and 3, put your hand under my thigh. The Oxford Study Bible puts it very delicately that, quote, it's near the organs of procreativity, signifying the solemnity of the oath that follows. The Jewish Publication Society translation says that he's putting his hand under his genitals. I mean, not under, that's, again, same thing, the seriousness of this oath. Some of the Jewish midrash actually gives the name, says this is Eleazar, but I don't think that's terribly important whether the servant has a name or not have a name, but anyway, that just mention that. So we have this encounter at the well. Can you think of some other encounters at the well that we're going to have in the future?
The Samaritan Woman.
We'll go into the New Testament, from the 4th chapter of John's Gospel. Yeah, the Samaritan Woman. Coming up, Isaac's son, Jacob, will, he'll meet Rachel at the well. And then Moses and Zipporah, remember they meet at the well. The well was kind of an interesting meeting place. I don't know if any of you remember, this I'm going way back now, we had a presentation from Jeff Rasmussen, who at the time was working for LWR. And he went to a trip in Niger and he took photographs. And in one of the villages they went, the LWR had purchased well pumps. Well, the problem was the engine of the pump wasn't working, and therefore they couldn't draw water. And the well was so deep that the women were not strong enough to pull the water up, and the men refused to do it because it was women's work. Isn't that interesting? In all these cases, it's the women at the well, never the men. And you wonder whether that, for some reason, got labeled.
Well, they're out in the fields. The men are out in the fields.
Yeah, or hunting.
And that leaves the women
Yeah,
to get
Yeah.
the water.
it's interesting.
Well, it's kind of interesting though, there were servants with these camels. I mean, they had 10 camels, so they probably had 9 servants along with the top guy. None of them were gonna water the camels. They all, Rebecca drew the water for all of them, so I'm like, look.
Yeah. And notice in verse 12, and this is just permeates through the whole chapter. He said, "O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham." This constant reference to God or to the Lord, looking for divine guidance through this whole journey, right? Divine guidance. And maybe we seek that ourselves sometimes. I think, that we're, listening, hopefully listening to God, asking God to be with us, as Ted Loder wrote, in our reaching and in our longing and in this unfolding and as our journey unfolds. And then in verse 14, we saw it even in 12, the 14 says, "By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master." And that word in the Hebrew is hesed. Sometimes you'll see it spelled with a C in front of it too, but it's silent. And there's lots of translations for this. Love, loyalty, mercy, steadfast kindness, or unending kindness. And it even denotes, said, a sense of action, a sense of making this happen. So not just saying, "Oh, look at that poor homeless person on the street, I just feel love towards them." But no, hey, here's a couple dollars to go get, or I guess $5, then I go get a sandwich at McDonald's, or here's a bottle of water, or to do something to enact this, to make things better for someone else. And this is certainly a chief attribute of God, that God is Hesed, that God is mercy, that God is steadfast love, and that love endures. So, point that out. Let's see.
Were Rebecca and Isaac related?
Yeah, yeah.
Cousins?
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out that.
That's right, figure out that relationship. Good point.
She's Abraham's niece.
Right. You know, and again, not,
Good.
I mean, sort of frowned upon, but I had neighbors who were farmers and they were cousins. And, you know, she said, well, it just kind of happened. And you know, and probably more rural cultures and years ago that, you know, was not terribly unusual. But see, this importance that they not, you know, that we're not going to intermarry with these Canaanite people, right?
Very, very tribal.
Very tribal. There we got to go back to. I mean, even though he left, he heard God's voice to tell him to leave. He left. He's been there. He's been there. Abraham's been there forever, practically, right? 100 and some years and more. And boom, nope, we're going back home to look for. Has anyone ever seen it? I've seen an example of that. I had a supervisor in Philadelphia who parents were from Sicily. He was born here, but they went to Sicily and got his bride, an arranged marriage. He met her
In Greece, they do that more
Met-
even, you know, than,
Yeah.
more recently than that, yeah.
Right, right.
Henry Louis Gates has a PBS program, Finding Your Roots, and a lot of people born in this country have a mixed ancestry, but when they get to Mandy Patinkin, he was Ashkenazi Jewish the whole way, 100%, because they had an intermarriage. They weren't going to marry outside of the group.
Yeah, yeah. And why is that? Why I mean, what's the impulse behind that tribalism, do you think?
The closer you are in your values and beliefs, I think the easier it makes the marriage.
And us versus them.
Right. Right, yeah, that somehow, maybe not that we're better, but we understand each other better than if we intermarry into people who are different. And then, right, that way we can preserve our culture, preserve our way of life.
For Abraham, was it a matter of faith? That he wanted Isaac to marry someone that believed in the same Lord as he did?
I don't think so, because I sense that, I'm not so sure that Rebecca believes in the same God that Abraham believes in. She will come around. But remember, this is like an Abraham thing, this Abraham-God relationship. It's not like, oh, they were all believers there in Ur, and then he goes off and he's called out. But that, you know, I think that's very unique to him, and not to his brother and to his brother's people. I mean, they're the same tribe, same group, but not necessarily the same God. Yeah, I think.
I think you're right, absolutely right, Dave, but in verse 50,
Yeah.
they say, Abram and Bethuel, the thing that comes from the Lord, we cannot speak to you anything bad or good. So they're taking, they don't say you're God, but I think you're right. It was God who revealed himself to Abraham.
Right.
Yeah, they always say the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. That it starts at Abraham and moves.
Yeah, hold that thought though too. Yeah, so I think she comes along, you know, in her relationship with this new family unit that she's going to become of, even though she's related to this family unit. Notice verse 20. So she, Rebekah, quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw and to draw for the animals. The men gazed at her in silence. Who else was doing some running back in chapter 18? Do you remember that? So earlier in the story, if you look at the oaks of Mamre, as Abraham was sitting there and he sees these people coming, right? And when he saw them, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them. Yeah, maybe just coincidence, but interesting. Keep that in mind. And then go to verse 60, and so that they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "May you, our sister, become thousands of myriads. May your offspring gain possession of the gates of their foes." Okay, now I'm going to go back, if you want to go back with me, go back to chapter 22, verse 17. Maybe I'll back up, I'll go back to 15. The angel of the Lord called, this is chapter 22, verse 15. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, says the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will indeed bless you, and I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars in the heaven, and as the sand that is on the seashore, and your offspring shall possess the gate of their enemies, and by your offspring shall the nations of the earth gain blessing for themselves, because you have obeyed my voice." See the similarity between those two? Abraham gets blessing like this. Rachel gets a blessing like this. As we go on, I was just thinking, you could almost say the God of Abraham, the God of Rebekah, and the God of Jacob. That Isaac it's like Isaac is the son of this really famous guy and the father of a really famous guy. And he's almost just like a conduit.
Stuff's always kind of happening to him. He's not really doing a whole lot.
Right. Right.
But as you said last time, he was kind of traumatized by his father taking a knife to his throat. That would cause some PTSD.
Understandable.
Yeah. Just, kind of hold that thought. You may not, but hold that thought, especially as we work through the story, because we're not going to get through it today, of course, but we're going to have other parts of Rebekah's story comes up, and we see that she is not passive. She is a doer. She is a doer.
Dave, before we get much further, verse 21 really caught my eye. Where they gazed at her in silence, whether or not the Lord had made this journey successful. What I read into that, this is some extraordinary things happening. And I think about it even for us today, or for me today, things happen that are extraordinary, and you stop and it sort of stops you in your tracks. Is this God doing this, or why is this happening? What's my role in this, or is this all God doing this? That's kind of in my view, that's kind of a key question that I sometimes get hung up on.
Or have you ever been in worship situations? We did this for Saturday for a while, but it sort of it didn't work like we would ask people, where have you seen God in your life this week? Where have you had God's sightings? But often how that got interpreted, it became sort of a time, which is nothing wrong with this, but it became a time for prayer requests. And people would say, oh, I want to pray for my, people couldn't really articulate maybe that where they saw God. That's not a criticism, it's just the observation that I made. And we kind of stopped it because we found ourselves kind of getting more into like when we open up and say, well, for what else or for whom else shall we pray, right? And that's how I think a lot of people were interpreting it, which is okay. But, you see, there's this chapter is just chock full. I would almost say is the search for God, or trying to perceive where God is in all of this, right? Like, is this the right woman? Is Rebecca? Is this the right person? Right? That's their big concern. I mean, what if they bring back the wrong woman?
Didn't God set this up?
Well, the
That's what it
angel-
sounds
the
like
angel was
to me.
there.
I mean, yeah, is this of God? The risk there. And the other thing I thought of is, this is a pretty good, journey they're taking. I mean, the bandits and this. They're traveling alone. It's not that many. They have 10 camels, and they probably had some of the camels were riderless on the way there because they needed to take back, right? They needed to take back Rebecca and her handmaids, and she probably had a couple people to take with her. It's not a lot of people, so God must have watched over them and kept them safe all that time. But yeah, and that the servant is released if things get really messed up, right? Well, the oath is it's okay. It's just like, this is a daunting task he's given. I mean, it's not like he's got a name and an address he has to find, right?
Right.
Or, oh, this is her, this picture's a little grainy here, but I think it's her. Right?
But on the other hand, the servant says before he even meets anyone, let the girl to whom I say, please offer your jar that I may drink, and who then says, drink and I will water your camels, and that's repeated. That's his prediction, and that's what's repeated. So it must have been the Lord working.
Well, that's what he banked on.
Yeah.
That's what he banked on, right?
Imagine if there had been a drought and no one was offering him water. For a long time.
Now, how many of us, let's fess up here, I've watched, March Madness and said, oh God, if he can make this three-pointer, I will go to church on Sunday. Right? Yeah.
No, and it's interesting that when we were talking about tribalism, that a generation later, Jacob goes back to find a wife, comes back with 2.
The old country. Well, anything else here? Okay. I'll warn you, 25 starts out with lots of fun names, so that means what? It's Corée time.
Shelley is very good.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. The baton has been handed off.
Oh,
You can blame it on the mask, Shelley.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Shelley.
All right. Abraham marries Katura. Abraham took another wife whose name was Katura. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan was the father of Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Asherim, Letushim, and Luim. The sons of Midian were Ethath, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldeh. All these were the children of Keturah. Abraham gave all he had to Isaac, but to the sons of his concubines, Abraham gave gifts while he was still living, and he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the east country. This is the length of Abraham's life, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite, east of Mamre, the field that Abraham purchased from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah. After the death of Abraham, God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac settled at Beer Lahai Roy. I might as well continue.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we all glanced down and said, uh-oh.
Here it comes again. These are the descendants of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's slave girl, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, named in the order of their birth. Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, and Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedemah. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names, by their villages and by their encampments, 12 princes according to their tribes. This is the length of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria. He settled down alongside of all his people.
Thank you, that's wonderful. So does somebody, she got you through the tough part.
got
Does
you
somebody
through the tough
want to pick
part,
up
right.
here?
These are the descendants of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padarama, sister of Laban, the Aramean. Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his wish, and his wife Rebekah conceived. The children struggled together within her and said, "If it is to be this way, why do I live?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger." When her time came to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, his body a hairy mantle. So they named him Esau. Afterwards his brother came out, with his hand grasping Isaac's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore him. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, living in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Esau sells his birthright. Once when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the field and was famished. Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stuff, for I am famished." Therefore he was called Edom. Jacob said, "First sell me your birthright." Esau said, "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil soup, and he ate and drank, and rose and went on his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright.
Okay, thank you all for reading. Well, let's go back to Katura here. So, I mean, gosh, Abraham is like ridiculously ancient at this point, right? And here he has a whole nother passel of kids with this woman who is all, besides his wife, is also called his concubine, and like Hagar, he sort of sends her away. I mean, doesn't mistreat them. I gave them gifts and such, but off they go, and And then he dies. And who are the two that show up?
Isaac and Ishmael.
Yeah, so here comes Ishmael again, right?
Yeah.
And some people would say, well, maybe even Ishmael has been his favorite all along. And now these descendants, and if you did some counting, you don't even have to count, take a wild and crazy guess, these sons of Ishmael number 12, yay, sort of this, right, 12 tribes of Israel, and these 12 kind of become like the Arabian or the Arab groups, these 12 princes. And then we have the birth of Esau and Jacob. An being barren, it seems to be this continuing challenge for women all through Genesis. That's sort of an issue. And she has twins. But notice, it's not two boys or two babies are in your womb, two what?
Nations.
Nations, two peoples are in your womb, and that would be the people of Israel, the people of Jacob, and then the people of Edom. That would be Esau's people. And remember, the people of Edom are going to be totally ticked. Israel's going to be, because when I'm fast forwarding here into Exodus, but when Moses is taking the people out of slavery in Egypt and they get through the Red Sea, they ask Edom, oh, can we get through here? Can we travel across? And what does Edom say? You can't. So that was, from that time on especially, Edom was not liked by the people of Israel for that insult and not helping them in their time of need. So these twins struggle in the womb. Now, it's interesting, I was playing around looking at some of the Jewish commentary on this, and we Christians do the same thing of basically trying to justify, rationalize why it was okay for Jacob, being the second born, to eventually come out on top. One of my favorite Jewish midrashes says this: well, if you put two diamonds in a tube, you put one diamond in, that's the first diamond, and then the second diamond in, which is going to come out first when you tilt it?
Yeah, second.
Not the first diamond, but the second diamond. So really, it's saying that Jacob was the first, but he came out second.
There seems to be, in this Old Testament, a preference for the second. And I'm wondering if that was
And
from the
where-
authors.
And what makes you think that? Where else did we see that? Way back when, earlier in Genesis.
Noah's son?
Abel and Cain.
Yeah, Cain and Abel, right?
Right.
Cain's the oldest,
Or
But-
Isaac and Ishmael.
or Isaac and Ishmael, though they come from different mothers, but still, right? And for some reason, and we don't really exactly know why, and again, we come up with all kinds of rationalizations, but remember, Cain, who's the first one that worships.
Yeah.
Cain is the first one that worships. His sacrifice, or whatever his gift, is rejected by God, and God favors Abel. And Linda's exactly right. There's something going on here about, this great reversal that we talk about in the New Testament. Mary's Magnificat, right? That great reversal. The poor will be filled with good things, and the rich will be sent away empty. Yeah, right? The meek shall inherit the earth.
The first shall be last, or last.
First shall be last, right? The last shall be first. this great reversal. You see the beginnings of it even here, where, you know, the first one is supposed to be the favored one, and no, that's not the case. Yeah.
Or even on the 12 tribes of Israel, Benjamin is the youngest of the 12.
Right,
But that's where David comes from.
right. Yeah, and then it's his brother Joseph, the last two in order of the 12 that, you know, right, it's Joseph that gets elevated, and that story awaits us. Yeah, and how about this, but even before that, in verse 22, wow, the children struggled together within her, and Rebekah said, if it is to be this way, why do I live? Or in the Jewish Publication Society translation, she says, why do I exist? Same thing. Why do I, but I mean even more, why do, talk about the existential question, why do I exist? Ooh. And that question just sort of, it hangs there, and the Lord said to her. So now suddenly, the first time we have, not a question, but the Lord speaking to a woman directly.
And all of a sudden, she has faith.
Right. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. Well, that's great information, Lord, but you're really not answering my question, why should I exist? Unless you just infer from that, well, you exist because you're going to deliver these 2 males who are going to be the, you know, beginnings of these nations. But, I mean, this is not a happy ending kind of thing, right? This is just the beginning of conflict, the beginning of turmoil, the beginning of family dysfunction, or maybe you could to some degree say the continuation thereof. But I mean, now it really gets jacked up, right? I mean, Cain, I guess you couldn't get, anybody should go back and say, right, Cain killed Abel, so I guess it can't get much worse than that. And it is interesting that Esau does not kill Jacob. But again, I think that's when as this story unfolds, I think we'll see Rebekah's hand in that. Mm-hmm. That she, I think through her skill, pushes some of the right buttons that prevents that from happening. And there's a lot of what's called etiology, you know, why are things the way, you know, Jacob means heel, Edom, the red color, it's, you know, like why did we get these names? Sometimes they're working backwards. Well, he was called Jacob because he was grabbing his brother's heel. So they grow up, Esau becomes a skillful hunter and a man of the field, and Jacob was this quiet man living in tents. Isaac loved Esau best because he was fond of game. So his stomach rolled maybe, or his taste buds, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So again, we've set the stage for some problems here. And then we have this story of, you know, Jacob not giving his brother a dish of food when he's famished. I mean, what do you think of that?
No brotherly love there, huh?
No brotherly love there, Fred says, right. Pretty mean-spirited guy here, right? Pretty manipulative.
Yeah.
Of course, on the other hand, Esau,
Doesn't really value his birthright very much.
right, seems a little bit of the dope, right? I mean, we're kind of playing into this cultural thing, we imagine this big burly outdoors guy is, you know, intellectually inferior, certainly not as wily, is not the deceiver, but is just sort of, you know, here I am, what you see is what you get, whereas I don't think Jacob was like that at all,
Which is strange, because hunters usually have to have a certain amount of cunning.
right?
Good hunters usually have to be fairly smart,
Right?
especially in that time.
Yeah.
And they don't say what Jacob does in these tents, he could just be staring at a ceiling for all we know. Doesn't necessarily say he's smart.
Right.
Plotting.
Right, plotting, yeah. Yeah, you could just say, anyway, he was like the kid that wouldn't leave the basement, you know, that, you know, failed to, you know, what's it, a failure to launch, right? You know, the kids come home from college and they just sit around and, you know, hang on their cell phone all day and watch television in the tent. Yeah.
So Jacob didn't think that Esau deserved a birthright. That might be it too.
Whether he thought he deserved it, he wanted it.
He
He
wanted
wanted
it,
the
but
birthright.
maybe he took it as well because
Yeah.
he thought he was better to have the birthright than Esau.
And maybe it's too early yet because we have more of this unfolding story to read. But maybe start thinking about, well, hold it a minute. Where is God in all of this? About our God sighting. I mean, is this blessed of God? Just the way God wants Jacob to get his birthright?
It almost seemed that God maybe had second thoughts. He had Esau coming out first, and then in the middle of the birth, he said, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I want Jacob.
I mean, wouldn't a kindly, peaceful abdication, if Esau's, look, you're much smarter than I am. You'll be a lot better at leading, Israel than I would. Why don't you just take over, brother? And I'll just, stay on the game preserve and have a good time, killing rabbits. Rather than deception. Deception is the tool. This is the means to this end. I'll hold that thought. Okay, let's see. Well, it's 5 up. Why don't we just hold 26. We'll read 26. So for next time, let's read 26, 27, and 28 going ahead. And then I'll take us through the very familiar story of Jacob's dream at Bethel. So we'll be reading about Isaac, one of the few sort of stories about him, with Abimelech, and Esau takes Hittite wives, and Isaac, and then we have the really big deception, right, and the blessing that Jacob steals, and then we'll go through the dream. Okay, does that sound like a plan?
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts on this, Joe?
Well, as you know, I'm learning all this stuff, but when I'm listening to this thing about Esau and Jacob, is there some symbolism that may go forward to what we had in the Gospel Sunday, the prodigal son, you know, the two brothers? Or is that just something
Well,
up in a tree again?
yeah, that's an excellent point, because we're going to have a scene coming up that seems like a precursor for the prodigal son story, a story of forgiveness, where, you know, well, we all sort of know the story, but where Esau forgives Jacob. Yeah. Which is pretty, I think it's a pretty powerful story. Yeah. Okay, well, very good. Blessings, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. There's snow shovels at the door in case you shovel your way out. Everyone at home, God bless you, take good care, we'll see you. Oh, one final thought. I will be up at the seminary on the 4th Monday in April. So can we meet on Monday, April the 8th? Hold a minute. I also have to go to, the person that I just got summoned today to go to court on the 18th of April at 11 o'clock. This person that broke into the church years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, years ago, it was 2020.
And that's the day after Easter.
Yeah, that's the day after Easter to boot. Would it be really wild and crazy if we, boy, talk about really messing, you know, but if we did something like Tuesday, April the 19th?
It worked for me.
That is Tuesday, or Tuesdays good for everyone? Any, no good?
I work on Tuesdays, but I can watch the video.
Well, we better look for the hard words to pronounce. If Shelley's not here, we always need a backup. These were some, I was looking at pronunciations on this Hebrew website. Some of these, like Deedon, and they weren't even on there. But it was really cool. It said, if you don't find a name, email, and they popped up the email for me to email it to them, but I didn't want to pester them. It's not that important. Some of these are pistols. Okay, Fred, Linda, Shelley, 19th, good for you guys. Okay. Well, let's make it Tuesday, April the 19th at 1 p.m. And thank you for your flexibility. I mean, here's the thing is, I might know, I doubt it, I might know ahead of time. I know what's going to happen. I've done to these things before. I'm going to show up at court, and they'll been out in the hallway and played Let's Make a Deal, and then I went up there for naught, and then I'll have to turn around and drive home. So that's what I'm trying. I've talked to the state's attorney. We were supposed to actually meet in do this in January, but we had a snowstorm. One of the big snowstorms we had, and it got canceled or postponed. And I talked to the state's attorney, and I said, "This is ridiculous. We got this guy on camera. There's no question of. I know you're not guilty. You're innocent before perfect. You know, he's guilty. We all know it. So I mean, just make a deal. You know, what are we doing? You know, figure it out. But anyway, that's me. Okay, so Tuesday, April 19th, 1 p.m.
Okay.
All right, thank you all. Blessings.
Thank you.